Okay, so show me the top news stories for 2025, exclude mainstream media. So this will be interesting because we've covered quite a lot of top stories over the last few months that we've been doing this. So we'll see if any of the ones that we've covered come up as part of the 2025 roundup. So the top news stories: rise of alternative and independent news platforms. Yes. That's the way to go. Independent outlets gained significant traction in 2025 as audiences moved away from legacy broadcasters. You don't say. I wonder why. Alternative platforms such as Open Democracy, The Canary, Novara Media, the Bristol Cable, and Corporate Watch were highlighted as leading independent voices. Oh, that's great. I follow some of those on X. I will be following the others as well now. Many of these outlets focus on corporate accountability, political transparency, and grassroots issues. Good. Public pushback against traditional media narratives. Isn't it interesting that these are the top stories? The fact that we are moving away, we have completely lost trust, belief, faith in mainstream. I would hazard a guess that this has been happening. It's happened for me over 20 years ago, as you know. We've discussed this. But I would hazard a guess that the pandemic may well have had something to do with a complete loss of faith, trust, and belief in the official narratives that are spouted at us, I think. Okay, alternative media commentary emphasised growing public dissatisfaction with mainstream news. Reports noted that audiences were seeking fresh perspectives and less biased reporting, driving interest in newsletters, regional papers, and niche platforms. Customizable feeds, Google, News UK, were increasingly used to bypass traditional editorial agendas. Yep. Street protests and social movements. Independent outlets covered protests and local activism more extensively than mainstream channels. Alternative news sources highlighted demonstrations across the UK, including cost of living protests and regional political actions. Yep. The cost of living, we're still suffering. We're still suffering. I mean, and the mainstream media doesn't tell you about the issues like that at home. These stories often focused on community level impacts rather than national political framing. Rightly so. We need to know what's happening in our communities. Economic pressure and market shifts. Non-mainstream reporting frequently covered economic instability and its effect on everyday life. Alternative outlets tracked market shifts, inflation-related pressures, and local business struggles, offering more granular analysis than national broadcasters. Regional news surgence. Local and regional papers, often overlooked by national outlets, played a major role in 2025 alternative news consumption. Papers like the Manchester Evening News and Yorkshire Post were cited as strong alternatives for deeper regional coverage. These sources highlighted local governance issues, community initiatives, and regional economic developments. So all the stuff that Joe Public, like me, like you, want to see. We want to know what's going on in our communities. We want to understand the struggles that are going on around us, not be bombarded by propaganda from the government and from the mainstream. And we can say without a shadow of a doubt that this comes from the government, because we know that the DSMA, who restrict what can be printed in mainstream media, is part of the Ministry of Defence. Political bias and media transparency debates. It's all about the media. Brilliant. Independent platforms continue to scrutinise political influence in UK media. Yep. Discussions around political leanings of major outlets, e.g., comparisons to USA Today's biases in the US, were used to highlight the need for alternative sources in 2025. Yeah, because there's a lack of transparency when it comes to major outlets. Independent outlets position themselves as more transparent and less influenced by corporate or political interests. Rightly so. Oh, quick comparison of key independent UK news sources. So, open democracy, focus area, democracy, rights, political transparency. Oh, okay. So Copilot is just giving us all the different types. So if you want to follow alternative media rather than mainstream media, these are the ones that are coming up at the moment as the most transparent. So we have open democracy. It's considered independent because it's non-profit and it's investigative reporting. So that's democracy, rights, political transparency. The canary is about social justice and activism. And that's reader funded, which is always a good sign. It means that the people who really value the content are paying to read the content and for you to be able to see it. So it's left-leaning independent voice. Novara Media is politics, culture and economics, and it's grassroots funded. So that's bottom up. It's not dictated by big money people. It's bottom up. Alternative political analysis. The Bristol Cable is local investigations and it's community owned. Awesome. And it's a cooperative newsroom. Then we have Corporate Watch, corporate accountability, investigative research into corporate power. Not sure who owns them, but I will look. I think it'll be interesting to find out. We will look. So that's Corporate Watch. So that, when it comes to 2025 for Microsoft, Copilot Microsoft, it's all about how crap the mainstream media is, which I would agree with. You probably agree with me now, especially after, like I say, especially after the DSMA findings that we did on the Research Hub. Okay, let's ask Claude. See what Claude comes up with. Now, I'm glad that Claude has brought this up. This goes back to the last discussion about protesting. Over 2,300 people were arrested under terrorism laws for holding signs reading, "I oppose genocide." Let that sink in just for a second. 2,300 people for holding a sign, "I oppose genocide." I'll tell you now, I oppose genocide. This is going up on YouTube. YouTube don't like the word genocide. So I'll say it again. I oppose genocide. I support Palestine action. I would hazard a guess that as Palestine Action has been deemed a terrorist organisation, that it's that part of the sign that they've been arrested for. But I wouldn't bank on it, because it may well be that if you just hold a sign saying "I oppose genocide," that would be enough. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. Considering what's going on in Iran at the moment and the fact that our government has turned around and said, that's not acceptable. People being killed in the streets is not acceptable. But they have been complicit in the killing of people in Palestine is just outrageous. The hypocrisy is outrageous. It's not good for my health. After the group was proscribed in July, representing what independent journalists described as an unprecedented use of terror legislation against activists. Effectively, that just goes to show that we have no freedom of speech in this country anymore. So when Starmer sat and scoffed at JD Vance when he said in the meeting at the White House that the UK didn't have freedom of speech, and he, I assure you we do. No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't. If you can't hold a sign, not actually actively doing anything, if you can't hold a sign saying I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action, you don't have free speech. You don't. The Labour government's welfare reform bill start that again. The Labour government's welfare reform bill proposed tightening eligibility for personal independence payments, potentially affecting between 800,000 and 1.2 million people, though after significant rebellion, it was amended to apply only to new applicants. Wow. Okay. That might be something worth looking into. I'm not sure what the amendments were. It says tightening eligibility. So I'm unsure what that means. If you're claiming personal independence payment, that means that you have a disability that impedes you from being able to continue and carry on with a normal life, what we would class as normal. It might affect your ability to work. It might affect your ability to be around other people, whatever it is. Personal independence payments are a lifeline for people who are suffering. So I will look into that. I will look at what the tightening eligibility is. And I appreciate that they've said, no, we're not going to do it for the people who are already on personal independence payment. But it will still apply to new applicants. And the application process for PIP is not insignificant. It is really, really thorough. And from a mental health point of view, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I would hazard a guess that a lot of the Citizens Advice interviews and appointments are to deal with things like that, where the paperwork is so extensive, it's frightening. It's scary. It's difficult to read. It's difficult to understand. It's difficult to go through. It's difficult to know what you should write, what you shouldn't write. So from a health and well-being point of view, I will look into that. Okay. The rise of Green politician Zach Polanski was highlighted as showing it's possible to build an eco-socialist electoral project in the UK despite the electoral system. Okay. Not really sure about that. Don't really know about that. Okay. And not something I'll probably look into. UK foreign and military policy. Oh, dear. Declassified UK reported that Parliament blocked their access, citing their Gaza standpoint, raising press freedom concerns. The outlet also covered the British Army's use of white phosphorus in Kenya and safety concerns for workers there. Declassified UK, very, very good outlet. Well worth a look at if you're interested in what's happening both home and abroad. At last, this is something that I've been posting on Keir Starmer's Twitter feed every time he posts. It's like, I'm not interested in anything you've got to say. I want to know about the hunger strikes in the UK and this. RAF surveillance flights over Gaza exceeding 600 by August, with timing and frequency linked to major Israeli operations, despite Ministry of Defence claims they were solely for locating hostages. Now, those are flights out of a UK airbase in Cyprus. Awful. Awful. I just want to draw your attention to this again. The timing and frequency is linked to major Israeli operations. Civil liberties. Independent media covered an unprecedented judicial review of Palestine Action's proscription, with campaign groups calling a last-minute judge swap a transparency-free stitch-up. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Multiple Labour councillors resigned from the party in protest. Oh, good. Multiple Labour councillors resigned from the party in protest at Keir Starmer's leadership throughout the year, with independent sources tracking those defections more closely than mainstream outlets. Of course, mainstream outlets wouldn't cover that. They don't. They don't want you to know that the rats are deserting the ship. Okay. So these alternative sources emphasise issues around press freedom, UK foreign policy complicity, civil liberties restrictions, and welfare cuts that they felt received insufficient critical coverage in the mainstream media. And I agree. So well done, Claude. Claude has brought up the Palestine action, and he has brought up the RAF involvement in Gaza. So I'm pleased with him over that. So that's cool. And we'll do good old Grok. Same question. We'll see what Grok comes up with. We do know that Grok loves to be very, very honest. So it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. And whether there are differences to Microsoft and Claude. Oh, he's taken his time. I presume it's because it's the whole of 2025. Okay. Now, we had this about a month ago. Ongoing grooming gang scandal and cover-up allegations. The systemic abuse of young girls by grooming gangs, estimated 1 million plus victims historically, remained a flashpoint, with renewed calls for a full national inquiry. Independent voices criticised authorities for cover-ups, diversity training over action, and arrests of parents trying to intervene. Public outrage peaked around failures in cases like Southport 2023, Nottingham attacks, Prevent scheme mishandling, and Baroness Casey's report avoiding ethnicity details. Okay. We did cover that this year. Immigration, small boats and asylum policy backlash. Record or high channel crossings, e.g. over 1,100 in one day. Benefits eligibility for hundreds of thousands of migrants, and perceived two-tier policing fueled widespread anger. Alternative commentary focused on undocumented arrivals under Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, net migration drops claimed as insufficient, and policies making illegal entry near impossible for citizenship. Protests, riots, and flagging operations symbolized resistance to perceived cultural erosion. I've discussed immigration. I've told you my standpoint on it. I've told you what I think. Why would these people be coming to our country? Why would they want to be leaving their own? If our government stopped interfering with other countries, then possibly those countries wouldn't feel the need to come here. Those countries, those people from those countries wouldn't feel the need to come here. I know that's a really simplistic view. I know it is. But if every government just kept their nose out of other people's affairs, I just feel that this would not be an issue. And it's complicated, and from a geopolitical point of view, when it comes to movement of goods and trade, I understand that we have to have relationships with other countries in order to be economically viable. I understand that. I just don't understand why we feel the need to go to war with countries and to back other countries that do feel the need to go to war with countries. It's make peace, not war. Economic turmoil from budget, taxes, and Trump tariffs. Rachel Reeves' budget dominated attention with tax hikes, stealth taxes, frozen thresholds, and winter fuel payment cuts hitting pensioners and farmers hard. Public discourse highlighted inflation rises, energy bills, private school VAT, and growth downgrades. US tariffs, 25% on steel and aluminium, and trade uncertainties added pressure, with warnings of businesses and investors leaving. We've discussed that as well. There are visual summaries of economic strain and public sentiment from 2025. Okay. Prison overcrowding, early releases and public safety concerns. Justice proposals for early prisoner releases, including some serious offenders, after good behaviour sparked fears over capacity crisis and safety. Independent sources decried this alongside broader nanny state critiques. Well, from my point of view, if you're going to quite happily lock people up for holding a sign that says, I oppose a genocide, if you're going to lock people up for that, if you're going to lock people up for posting on Twitter, saying what they think on Twitter, sorry, X, I'll never get used to it being X, I won't. But if you're going to lock people up for that, then that's possibly a contributing factor to the fact that our prisons are overcrowded. Just a thought. Okay, free speech and policing controversies. We'll do a take two on that. So, arrests for online posts, memes, non-crime hate incidents, and perceived suppression drew ire. Cases like Tommy Robinson's appeals, Glastonbury investigations, and anti-protest laws featured heavily in alternative narratives. Well, yeah. When it comes to, like, we've just discussed the prisons, when it comes to, like, you know, getting arrested for posting something online, it has completely taken away our free speech. People are frightened to say anything. People are frightened to share their opinions. People are frightened to discuss their opinions in public for fear of offending. And Tommy Robinson, well, he's now a shill for Israel. So, in my humble opinion, anything that comes out of that man's mouth is absolute tripe. Has been, anyway, absolute tripe. He's an inciter of violence and is an inciter of anger. So I don't allow him to affect my internal mechanisms. I just ignore him in the hopes that eventually he'll go away. You never know, he might move to Israel. I'm sure they'd love him there. Other notable stories from alternative angles. Chagos Islands handover and billions paid to Mauritius. I don't even know where Chagos Islands are. Family farm inheritance tax hikes decimating rural communities. We've spoken about that. National Health Service crises, waiting lists, maternity scandals, low satisfaction. We know about those, and I've done a dive on the maternity scandals and the fact that the mainstream media were really outlandishly giving headlines that just were atrociously bad. Environmental health issues, heat waves, sea temperature rises, and bird flu culls. Okay, so these reflect the year's dominant public conversations. Often criticism of institutional trust, migration management, and economic handling, as seen in high engagement independent discussions. So that is the news, a breakdown of the top stories for 2025.